Hi everybody, Steve Griffiths here, developer of the MTPredictor software program. In today's video I'd like to look at a roundup of the USE minis. This is for yesterday, October the 22nd. Here I'm using the MTP RT add-ons for NinjaTrader 7. Yesterday was a very interesting day, as we were saying in the webinar, particularly early on in the day, because we were saying that the pattern wasn't particularly clear, and the main reason it wasn't clear is because we hadn't reached any larger degree support. The market was going down, but we hadn't reached any large degree support. So I want to follow those comments up and see how the rest of the day unfolded. Now, if you remember in the webinar, we were looking at this standard TS3 trade setup on the sell side for the ES. Standard and automatic trade setup. STF is red, so all MTPredictor users could take this trade, put the analysis on, market came down to the first target here, come down, the STF is weak, so you come out at the first target, so that would be a very plus 2.9 hour profit. So that was a good start to the day there, with a very nice standard automatic trade setup from what was pretty much the high of the day there, which was very nice indeed. As the market carries on down, you can see we make new lows here, we come up, we have a TS2 later in the day. Again, this is a standard automatic trade setup with the red STF, but I'd like to bear in mind, or I'd like to hold on for looking at this, because I want to look at the larger 15-minute charts for the larger trend direction, and I'll do that in a second. Let's come over to the YM. Here we had a TS1 buy setup, red STF. Now, do you remember we were looking at this in the webinar and we were very skeptical about our decision point support off here, about whether the market would indeed rally up to new highs. And do you remember both John and myself were saying that because the large degree trend basically was pretty much unclear, it was a very difficult one to try and justify taking this on the long side. Plus it was against a red STF, so it wasn't a standard trade setup. But if you had taken it, it would have been a -1 hour loss. But I'm just saying it would have been a very difficult one to justify, as we were saying in the webinar. Later in the day, again, there was a TS2 sell, standard MTPredictor trade setup, because the STF was red. However, now let's look at the 15-minute chart, and this is where things get very interesting, because do you remember we were talking about yesterday that we were saying that the market was unclear because we hadn't reached 15-minute support. Well, let's go and have a look at this, and this I thought was amazing. If I zoom out a bit on the YM, this was our last major pivot low. Let's go back to the start of the day, which was around about there when we were doing our webinar. If we right mouse click on this low pivot, we put the decision point on, can you see that here's our decision point low here, and the market hadn't reached it. Well, just look what happened for the rest of the day. Bang, down there, right at that low there at about 1:30, 2 o'clock time. So let's actually put a box around this using the standard NinjaTrader drawing tools, and let's now go back to the 3-minute chart, because this is a great example of how to gauge your shorter term 3-minute trends or 3-minute trades by looking at the 15-minute support and resistance zone. So I just want you to all totally understand that this DP support zone on the 15-minute chart was on the chart in advance. In other words, it had you prepared for this level before the market even got there. So let's now go down to the 3-minute chart. And lo and behold, this is exactly where it came in. So now can you see that the market was now rallying off this larger degree support zone. So in reality, this TS2 sell setup was now against the new larger degree uptrend, and this is why this setup failed excuse me, because the larger degree trend was up. Now what I do teach is, if you're an advanced trader and you want to take a trade that's now against the larger degree trend direction, once you get to the 100% initial risk level, which you did here, you bring your stop to break even. So in other words, you're more aggressive with your trade management getting to break even, because you now know you're against the large degree trend. So okay, now we know that the large degree trend was turning and the 15-minute charts were up, particularly on the YM. If we look at the ES, which is the boss, which is the main market, we look at this, I'll zoom out, and although, whoops, so I need to go to a 15-minute chart first, don't I? Let's go out to the 15-minute chart. zoomed out a little bit too far there. And although we weren't at our DP support, which is still a bit further below the market, we were at basically a double bottom. Can you see there? There's the cursor at that last low there. So the market came down, snapped back up again at a double bottom with these lows here. So the ES was also making a rally at support along with the NQ, not the NQ, sorry, the YM. So that's why when we go back to the 3-minute chart, again, just zoom in a bit, this TS2 sell setup was against a large degree uptrend. Therefore, it was if you were taking it, bring your stops to break even more aggressively. Now, bear in mind now that we'd had a major low unfold around about the 1:30, 1:45, 2 o'clock zone, this area here. Wouldn't it be nice now if we had a long trade? In other words, looking to take a trade on the long direction. Well, guess what happened on the NQ? And this I thought was absolutely beautiful, in that this is the area around here which was bringing the lows in on the ES and the YM. We did have DP support off this prior low here, but basically the NQ was chopping sideways. But what I thought was absolutely amazing was as the market rallied up, we came back down, we had this TS1 buy setup here. Yes, this was against a red STF, but we now know that we can avoid that as more advanced traders, because we knew that this low here was actually a larger degree low, particularly on the ES, particularly on the YM. Do you see how that's important? That this here low was not necessarily a low on the 15-minute chart of the NQ, which I go to. It was actually just a double bottom there. You can see we're double bottoming, but the point being is that the YM and the ES, which are the more important markets, were actually making lows at that level. So therefore we're looking to take trades on the long side, and here we had a beautiful TS1 buy setup unfold. There's our blue buy bar. We put our analysis on. Because we now know that large degree trend is up, do we look to come out at our first target here? No, we don't, because we now know that this is a holy grail trade setup. In other words, this rally off here is a wave 1. This correction down here we assume is a wave 2, because it's the initial correction off the initial move off an important low. Therefore we play for the typical wave 3 WPT. Let's place the analysis on at that level there, and you can see the result was a very nice plus 6.2 hour profit. For the advanced traders among you as well, we can go back to the last major pivot, which was the high made earlier in the day, and actually if we put the DP on from that level there, can you see how the typical wave 3 WPT, which was here, was also in the region of the DP target as well. So yet another reason why this would be a good target to take. So as you can see, a beautiful holy grail trade setup at the end of the day to put in a lovely 6.2 hour profit. But this was all set up because we knew that this low down here at basically between 1:30 and 2 o'clock New York time was coming off major support on the 15-minute chart on particularly the YM. So with that in mind, that can then set the large degree trenders up for the latter part of the day, which then set up our holy grail trade setup, which was this one here. So a very, very good day for the USE minis yesterday, in that we had a very nice trade here at the end of the day, plus 6.2R, and when we go back to the ES, which I will in a second, a good trade there. Just want to mention this buy trade here. Do you remember that the large degree trend was still down before we reached this large degree support zone here? So the more advanced traders among you wouldn't have been taking that anyway. I just think it's important just to mention that. So again, just to sum up, a very nice holy grail trade setup to the long side on the NQ in the strong rally from the close, and it was all set up because particularly the YM and the 15-minute support zone coming in there, nailing the low of the day very nicely. On the way down earlier in the day, as we saw in our trading webinar, we did have a very nice TS3 sell setup on the ES earlier for plus 2.9R. So plus 2.9R plus 6.2R is very, very briefly over 10R profit for the day yesterday. So a very, very good day for the MTPredictor routines yesterday. Not only for standard trade setups, but also for our advanced trade setups with our Holy Grail trade setup, particularly bringing it all into context with the larger degree trend on the 15-minute charts.